No? Okay. We got some discussion items. The first one is open meeting training, and we're focusing on the commissioner comments. And we have our legal team down here, so if you would, please.
Sure. So my name is Kayla Herman. I'm the city attorney. I don't believe I've met you. Constance?
Yes.
Right? Okay. And Amy?
Yes.
Okay. Nice to meet you
Nice to
officially.
meet you.
And this is Breanne Drury. She's our assistant city attorney. And Jennifer Tangano is our other assistant city attorney, and she might be popping in a little later. So I am going to let Bree take it away with her presentation, and then we'll go from there. So thank you for having us.
Would you like me to sit or stand over here?
Do whatever is comfortable for you.
Well, we can be a little more informal. As Kayla stated, I'm Breanne. You can call me Bree Drury. So I was made aware that you guys wanted to talk a little bit more about commissioner comments and how that relates to the open meetings laws in Idaho. So I'll start off by saying that just a broad generalization that an agenda is required for every meeting, and the purpose of having an agenda is to give notice to the public on what items will be discussed during that meeting so that they can decide whether they want to come participate in the meeting, whether they want to listen, etc. It also goes towards transparency in the government, just being transparent on what these boards and commissions do and what they discuss. The Idaho Attorney General Manual has notes that specifically on agenda items, and I wanted to read something that, or word for word what they have in their manual. And this is important because the Attorney General's office is responsible for enforcing the open meetings laws against state entities in Idaho. So the question posed is, what must an agenda contain? And the answer states, what constitute an agenda to satisfy the posting requirement is not set forth in the open meeting law. However, an agenda is defined in the Black's Law Dictionary as a list of things to be done, as items to be considered at a meeting, usually arranged in order of consideration. The agenda notice requirement is not satisfied by merely posting a weekly schedule of the governing board, which sets forth the time, place of the meetings, and who is participating. Rather, the notice must be specifically set forth in the purpose of the meetings and items of business. I highlighted this sentence. Agenda items should be listed with specificity and not buried in catch-all categories, such as a director's report. An agenda item that requires a vote shall be identified as on the agenda as an action item to provide notice that an action may be taken on an item. Identifying an item as an action item on the agenda does not require a vote to be taken on that item. So reading this, and as I noted, the highlighted sentence that agenda items should be listed with specificity and not buried in catch-all categories, such as a director's report, that kind of ties back to the commissioner comments. Our advice is that we don't have discussions during the commissioner comments. More, it's an opportunity for a commissioner to discuss whether there's possibly an event coming up, or they're congratulating somebody in the city for something, or just kind of bringing the attention to someone or to the rest of the commission and anybody listening on any comments that you may have. And I think it's also important to note that I did notice that on the meeting agenda, you do have a section for future agenda items. So our office recommends that if you do have something that you want to discuss amongst all of the commissioners, that you bring it up either there, or you can certainly talk to Nikki or Jed beforehand and have something put on an agenda or a future agenda that you would like to discuss amongst others. And there also are laws that if something comes up that is necessary or an emergency to discuss, there are procedures to amend a current agenda. And if you guys ever have any questions on that, you feel free to contact our office. But yeah, I guess I'll just kind of open it up for any questions. And I mean, as always, we're always here to help, and we're here to help you. And if you ever have any questions, feel free to contact us, and we will definitely be popping in on some meetings just to have a friendly face and show you guys that we're here. So
basically what it's saying is you're not allowed to do any kind of deliberation
Correct. If
during
you,
comments.
right,
You just bring the comment out like, on November 2nd, there's going to be a GOP meeting at such and such a place at such and such a time, and then that's where it stops.
right. Yeah, and if you certainly can bring up, if you want to discuss, like I had mentioned before, if you want to have a conversation amongst each other, that can certainly be put on another meeting agenda. We just want to limit the comments section to just comments, to follow the AG's manual as well and their advice. Because they're ultimately the ones that govern this, so.
Basically, what they don't want you doing is sneaking something by
Right.
without the public knowing about it.
Right, and that goes back to the transparency and why we have an agenda in the first place.
So as long as the item is under discussion items on the agenda, then it can be openly discussed because the public was notified that that item was going to be discussed.
Yes, correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
I needed it in social worker terms.
Yeah, no
Not
problem.
legal terms.
Now,
No, that's good.
the other factor, she pointed out in the book, read in the book, that just because it has an action item next to it, doesn't mean that you have to do an action. But, reverse of that, if you don't put that action item there and you do an action, then you're in violation.
Correct.
Yeah.
So if you think there might be a potential action, then you put it on there? And if there isn't, there
You're
isn't?
just covering your bases by saying there's potential action item there.
Right.
Go ahead, Bert.
Mr. Chairman, so to paraphrase what I've heard here, I think the word comments is probably a misnomer under commissioner comments and perhaps under staff comments, staff liaison comments also, because what it sounds like she just said is it would be announcements, commissioner announcements. All we can do is announce something.
Yeah, that would seem to be more
I would
appropriate.
take issue with the word deliberation, because deliberation is usually, I don't think we've ever deliberated anything under commissioner comments. Deliberation is usually used when you're deliberating toward a decision to vote on. So now my question directed to you is, to what extent is this a departure from the past? Because in my experience, and I have attended beyond count number of city council meetings and school board meetings and county meetings, all of their agendas have always contained comments from the members of the board and city manager comments of the staff, and have never been itemized as to what was going to be discussed. So is this first of all, I haven't attended a city council meeting for just a few months. Are there agendas, which, they're not in the box here, are there agendas now saying councilor comments, and there is a list of the topics they're going to talk about, and mayor's comments from the mayor with a list of topics that are going to be discussed?
So I think you don't need, so commissioner comments is just, it's fine the way that it is put on the agenda, and we added this language, comments shall not be related to an item currently before the commission or an item that may come before the commission in a foreseeable future, and should be limited to comments, not discussion. So say, for example, you wanted to announce that you had some type of an announcement for an event coming up. You would not need to put that you were going to discuss that or comment about that event under councilor comments. Commissioner
I
comments,
understand that, and it's a bit of a definitional issue. I don't consider that a comment, that's an announcement. But go ahead.
We don't want discussions amongst the commissioners on the same topic. If you want to have a discussion, even if you don't take an action, like Jed mentioned, you would put that under discussion items, and you could label it as an action item, or you don't have to. That's kind of up to you guys. But does that kind of answer your question, or?
I can kind of chime in too,
Okay.
if it helps.
Yeah.
So based on the council's current process, they have a councilor comments and a mayor comments section just like this. And in fact, this verbiage that is now on your agendas was actually brought to me by Eric Peterson, and he thought it would be helpful to have some clarifying language. So this language that says, that Bree just read, comments can't be related to an item, limited to comments, not discussion, actually is directly on the city council agendas as well. And so really just the piece we are trying to emphasize is announcements, comments, whatever topic you're wanting to notify others or the public about is fine. It's really when it crosses the line into the discussion where as a board, you're then having back and forth discussions on this topic. That's when we pump the brakes and say, let's put this on an agenda so that the public is aware that, for example, we're going to be talking about, the need for an ADA ramp on this street or something like that. It's really when it crosses that line from comments or announcements to discussion. So I can't speak to other entities and what they do, but I know that our city council follows this practice.
Well, I'll speak to other entities. So the Lewiston School Board's in violation of this, and I should turn them into the county prosecutors?
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we represent the city, and so all the advisory boards and commissions, fall under the direction of the city council, and so this has been and will continue to be the city's practice and how we have these things labeled on the agenda. So it's not to say you are not able to share comments. It's just when it crosses that line into discussion and there's clearly, we're talking about something or we want to talk about this topic, we should have that on an agenda so the public knows we're talking about this topic. So like Bree said, if they're interested in attending, they can. If they want to provide comments on that, they can. So it's all about transparency. I'll be the first to say that, across the state, people interpret things differently, do things differently, especially with Public Records Act, Open Meetings Law, where there tends to be a lot of gray areas. But like Bree pointed out, when we have specific direction from the Attorney General on these kind of points, we just want to make sure that all of our boards and commissions and council follow that. So that's where it's coming from.
And I'm splitting hairs because I do consider this a departure from past practice. I've never seen any board or public body vote on anything under commissioner comments or mayor's comments or city manager comments. It's always been just sort of laying the groundwork of sharing information.
Yeah.
But you only want, what I'm interpreting, you want one person to share information, like, there's going to be a volunteer fair this Saturday. You don't want a dialogue among board members.
We don't want the back and forth discussion, correct. Yeah.
Even though it was never intended to lead to a vote.
Correct, because just like today, you have discussion items where transit manager Suzanne is going to give a presentation. In my opinion, that would not be appropriate for her to give a presentation where there's going to be back and forth discussion. She's providing information on a topic if that was not clearly labeled on the agenda. So people know that that's going to be a probable, item of discussion. So I guess in my mind, I've always viewed commissioner comments or counselor comments as sort of want to let people know about this. So like you said, announcement seems appropriate. I also think, if you just have a general comment about something, that's okay too. Like I've heard some, I read this really great article about this topic. I think you might be interested in it. Here's some information about it. It's just, it's when it crosses that line into back and forth discussion about a substantive topic, that's when we say, let's put it on an agenda.
I want to go one step further. I haven't attended a city council meeting in a few months, but so I don't know if anything has changed in a few months. But under that comment section, that was often the section where the counselors, city councilors, or other bodies discussed what was brought up under citizen comments. And I know, because it's under citizen comments at the beginning of the meeting, the public body is supposed to remain quiet and just listen, just take in the content. And I know it has been extremely frustrating to citizens to render an opinion, a comment, add something to the body, and then feel they have to sit through 2, 3, 4 hours of meeting before they get down to the counselor comments, where the council can now respond to those concerns. And you're saying they can no longer respond, that all they can do under comments is saying, hey, Mrs. So-and-so brought up a really good point, let's schedule that for our next meeting.
Well,
So now they're not only waiting 4 hours, they're waiting 2 weeks or a
well,
month.
and what I'm saying is it depends. And the reason why I'm responding that way for city council is because just this past year with the change in the form of government, all of the procedural, well, not all, but most of the procedural provisions in city code specific to city council and city council meetings have changed. So I would have to go back and look for sure, but I think it might say that it's up to the mayor as to whether or not he or a counselor would be able to respond to a person commenting under citizen comments. So I think, and again, don't quote me because I don't have it right in front of me, but I think it's up to the mayor. So that might have changed a little bit, but I think there might be a little more flexibility in there for the mayor to allow someone to respond directly after a citizen comment or not. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't really seen that much lately. So, you know, we've modeled, I guess, some of this language, commissioner comments after the city council agendas, but the city council has much more structure and more specific rules specific just to them in city code.
So one more follow-up. They have the advantage of meeting 3 times a month, so things aren't delayed that long. Are you advising us that if we had a citizen's comment, which is rare, but we have had some, a citizen's comment on a contentious subject, by definition it's not on the agenda because we didn't know it was going to be brought up, that we can't respond to it? We'd have to say, interesting point, we'll see you a month from now when we will discuss that topic. That's what we need to do?
No, and I'm not saying that there's really a black and white answer because,
Okay.
again, I think it's going to depend on what the comment is. It's up to the commission and the chairperson really to decide, you know, if someone makes a citizen comment about something and maybe they're asking a question and one of the members or staff knows the answer and they can respond right there, that's certainly not prohibited. What I would say is if a citizen maybe says, you know, I've noticed that this, I'm using a ramp as an example because that's what I have in my mind. This ramp is falling apart, there's cracks in it, we need to get it repaired. I'm bringing that to your attention. I don't think it would be appropriate then for the commission to launch into a full-on discussion of that ramp, what should be done, back and forth discussion without that being on the agenda. But what you could do is say, you know, thank you for bringing that to our attention. We will, you know, put that on our next agenda, or if it's something that needs to be addressed sooner rather than later, you know, you always have the ability to call special meetings or depending on the need for it. Or another example is if a citizen approaches you directly and they say, hey, I've got this concern, I need, you know, DAC to talk about this and maybe make a recommendation to council. You could, you know, notify Jed or, you know, quickly have it placed on the agenda if possible. If the agenda's already gone out, it could be amended. So there are mechanisms for you to not have to wait a full month to respond. And so, no, I'm not saying that it's the body, you can't speak to anyone who comes here. It's just when it crosses the line into clear discussion amongst the members, that's when it should be a discussion item labeled on the
My
agenda.
scenario on that is this: if during citizen comments somebody brought up something that was fairly urgent and would require the council's consideration immediately, meaning within the month, I would, as chair, I would request that we do a special meeting of the Disability Commission so that we could discuss and vote on it with a recommendation to the mayor, because he's the one that calls the shots. And then it goes to the mayor and he can either take care of it at his level or pass it on to the council, depending on what it is.
And that's a great point, because depending on what, you know, the concern is, maybe it is something that staff or the mayor could help handle quicker if needed. So it's really just dependent on what it is, but that's a great point.
And Nikki, the fastest we could ever schedule a special meeting is a week later, or even beyond that.
We have to post it for 5 days.
Yeah,
Well, and that's for a regular meeting. So
Yeah.
a special meeting just
48
requires
hours.
24 hours notice.
yeah.
So if there was truly an urgent matter necessitating DAC to meet quicker,
Mhm.
you just need 24-hour notice and agenda.
Sorry, I don't.
No,
like,
you're fine.
went around
That's what I'm
you.
here for.
You are-
That's what we're here
You
for.
are the presenter. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you. I
Yeah,
do
appreciate it.
consider that a bit of a departure from past practice and what from some other bodies do, but
Well,
we
yeah.
can certainly modify our behavior to conform with this.
One of the things we have to also consider is that the political climate might have changed in Boise so that the rules are a little more strictly adhered to versus previous administrations, that kind of thing. Court cases come up that change things as far as how strict we get, that kind of stuff too. That also can affect it. Like the state Supreme Court comes up with a ruling, well, it may change things.
Yep, and I would just end with, like Bree said, our office is here to help. We certainly are not intended to be a hindrance. We, just want to make sure that everyone is following the open meetings law, and especially where we have this direct guidance.
Especially
we would
when the
just-
fines are a little bit stiffer than they used to be.
Yeah, right. We don't want anyone facing, unintentional penalties. So thank you for having us.
Yeah, well, thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Kayla, you guys will be having an open meeting training, won't you?
Yes, and we will schedule that hopefully sometime in February. We're planning to get that scheduled next week, and then I'll share that with Nikki and Leah and make sure you're aware. So yeah, we'd be happy for you to come.
Cool.
And the new commissioners have to get the training within 6 months, right?
Correct. Yep.
Is that city policy or state?
It's under city code actually, chapter 2 of city code. It was a requirement council put in place a few years ago. But if you aren't able to actually attend an open meetings law training, we have materials you can just review, and that satisfies the requirement. So it's just for new members who probably aren't familiar with the open meetings law, making sure that they get up to speed
It
within
never
6
hurts to
months.
do it for review.
Yeah.
Well, the roadshow that the Attorney General's office used to put on every year or every
Mhm.
2 years
Yeah,
was outstanding.
Yeah.
I've attended it
Yep.
twice, and it was outstanding. And I mean, if
Yeah.
you go to that, you wouldn't need to go to
right, yep,
what the city's doing.
yeah.
But do you have any indication whether the new Attorney General's going to?
I don't know. I don't know.
Well, that'll be a strong indicator as to
Yeah, whenever we have
we'll
the
let you
dates
know.
scheduled, for
how
sure. Okay,
seriously he
yeah.
takes.
It is usually like 4 hours. It's usually all morning or all
he takes
afternoon.
this.
Yeah.
It kind of goes over a multiple
I-
public records.
I would certainly
open
recommend
meeting law.
Sounds
that
super fun.
It's-
our city attorney's office recommend to the
It
mayor
is a good training though.
to
And it's usually,
Get-
I don't know
get
if
a
it's
hold
with-
of
but it's
the,
usually with the county as
state
well.
attorney general's office.
Prosecutor's office.
Highly recommend that they do their roadshow. Like, I've been to the one too, Mark has been to, and that was really good, well covered,
Mhm.
things like that, so, yeah. And not only that, but it gives the Attorney General's office a chance to personally one-on-one meet with local
Right.
Training at one.
Yep.
governments.
Yeah, it's a really great resource I've attended to. So thank you. Have a
Okay.
good rest of your week and
Thank
weekends.
you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Okay, our next thing is discussion of transit system. And Suzanne's going to present.
I'm Suzanne Senior. I'm a transit manager. I know I haven't met several of you before, so hello.
Hi.
I think I'm going to present up front. Sorry, Nikki, but I can't get this to go to flip the slides.
Oh, it's a different remote.
It's a different one. It's
Oh, that's why.
It's,
Because you're holding the wrong one.
it's this one.
It's like at home.
Is it on other side?
I know, we
You
have
got
3 of them all
different
lined up.
remotes.
Yeah.
There we go.
Or I can just do it from here. and-
You'll still get a
No
mouse.
battery.
Okay.
I'll move.
Well, sorry about that.
Oh, you're okay.
So I know that you guys wanted to talk about 19th Avenue, but I thought since we had several new members of the commission that I would go ahead and let you know what we have available from Lewiston Transit. to talk about, actually I should go back to the other one, to talk about Lewiston Transit, really, we also need to talk about the Stoughton County Public Transit. Because together, our mission is to provide seamless transportation through the LC Valley. So we coordinate with Stoughton County Public Transit. They're over on the other side of the river. They're county-based. We're city-based. We're on this side. So they not only take care of Clarkston, they also take care of the city of Stoughton. So both of our systems were brought together in 2010, so we've been providing service since then. We took over service from the nonprofit that was managing the service at that time. Just so you know that Lewiston Transit, of course, is governed by the city council as well as the mayor. Stoughton County is governed by their 3-member local board. Also funding. Our funding is primarily from federal grants and the city general fund, fares as well. Fares are a very tiny portion. I mean, they don't even make up, they might make up 3% of our total.
I was just gonna ask that
Yeah.
question. Are you serious?
Yeah, so little.
3% of their total budget?
Yep, 3% of ours.
If you wanted to raise, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah,
but
go
If you
ahead.
wanted to raise fares, who has to give you permission?
We do have to go in front of the council because anything that would represent at least a significant change in fares or a 25% like increase in our route or decrease in our route. And most of the time, because we accept federal monies, we're required by the federal government on how we go about doing that.
But no.
Most of the time, they're worried about takeaways and about exorbitant increases in fares.
But nobody higher than city council?
No.
The feds wouldn't have to approve?
No, but they would, we do have, and this year is our triennial, so we get a 3-year review. If they were to look at our records and see that we significantly jumped up the price of the fares, they would definitely have something to say about it and weigh in.
Like, the big questions would be, where's this money going? Now, maybe that's what the outside agencies would be asking is, where is our money going? Is it going to someone's pocket, or is it going to take another driver, or what?
And economic justice is a big deal right now for the federal government when they're governing federal transit. One thing they want to make sure you do, if you do a service expansion or a facility expansion, they want to make sure you do an equity analysis in the location that you're doing that, to ensure that you understand the impact on the surrounding environments where that facility or that service is going in. For example, you guys have heard me pounding for service in North Lewiston, and I really need to provide service to North Lewiston, say, before I could go expand to the orchards. Given the disparity probably of the incomes in both of those areas, not having service, direct service, because right now Appaloosa Express does that for us, but not having direct service in North Lewiston and then going and expanding in the orchards is not something that would be equitable justice. So the federal government takes a look at that.
But you were, just to clarify
Yeah.
for the record, is this being recorded?
I don't see it on live stream, so I'm gonna assume
Okay.
it's not.
Yeah, I don't know.
We could put it on the agenda next month to talk about it, if the meeting is being recorded since it's not on today's agenda. You're talking about fixed route. Your dial-a-ride does go to North Lewiston, right?
Dial-a-ride does, yes. Thank you for that
If a
clarification.
Oh, it is
person,
being
if a
live
person
streamed.
is disabled.
Yes.
We are being live streamed.
So Mark, watch yourself.
Yes.
So just the ways that, we partner, we have shared dispatch services and dial-a-ride trips. We provide the dispatch services for both entities. And then we have a contract with the Stoughton County Public Transit, and then they go ahead and reimburse or pay us for that. We honor each other's passes and tokens, so you can ride seamlessly. If they have a pass, somebody has one of their passes, they can hop on board, no questions asked, and vice versa. We also honor Appaloosa Express's passes, and they will honor ours up through North Lewiston, but not further than North Lewiston. When they go to, clear out to Kuski, they charge.
Is there any talk about working something like that out where you could go that far. And with just one pass and go through the whole system.
It would be an interesting concept. And I know that,
Because I know there's a lot of people that live way out there and work here. And that would be a big boom for some people.
I'll take a look at that, and I'll take a look at the demand for that as well. We're going to do a rider survey, so that's a great question to ask. Thanks. We also share marketing. Our website is together. It's ridethevalley.org. You can go up and take a look. Our schedule and map is all together as well, so that you don't have to look for the Soton County's information separately from ours. It's all together since we're pretty integrated. Both our services, we do have an app called Route Shout, and that's primarily for fixed route, where you can see the buses go around. You can know when the next bus is going to come to your stop. So we share that application as well. And we do connect to the community center. That's where their blue line comes into town, and we transfer riders. They meet our east route there as well as Appaloosa Express. So all three services line up at the community center. And currently under design, we're putting the bid documents together for a bus pullout at the community center. Currently, all of the buses line up right at the front entrance. We want to pull the buses away from the entrance so it's safer. We're going to do a pullout into the sidewalk area on Lincoln Street that faces Les Schwab. So all three buses can pull in nicely right there, and then riders can transfer between the services pretty readily. We'll have a shelter up there, nice bus pull out, bathrooms. I'm hoping we can afford them as well. Going the wrong way. Staff, just to give you an idea of what our staff is, Soton County has total of 15 employees. We have 13. You can see drivers make up the bulk of our employees. We both have a transit manager and operations supervisor. We have the dispatchers on our side, and then they have an admin assistant. Okay, I'm going too fast. So this is what the routes look like, and I'll explain our route. We meet at the community center. You can see where the big bubble is with a Soton County Public Transit. That's where their blue line comes in and goes back. Then we also meet here. Both services meet at the mall. And if you think about it, it's like a reverse figure eight. While, say, East Route, which is the yellow, and these are the high school colors, each one of their routes are labeled blue line, red line, green line, and they didn't leave us any colors left. So we had to do the high school colors. So we meet here, and we do kind of a reverse figure eight. If East Route, which is the gold, is up in the orchards, then the West Route is downtown. They meet at Winco, and then they do the reverse. So that's how that services works once an hour. So in general, there's an hour between buses. So most of the stops, we call it a headway. It's an hour headway, except in Winco, which is every 30 minutes. It's inconvenient. I'll tell you right now, to be really convenient, you should have 30-minute headways where we would have more buses, but that would require more drivers and more money. So right now at this point, our service just has hour headways. A Soton County Public Transit has more of the 30-minute headways on their side. And sometimes I'm jealous because they have a lot less territory to cover than we do. They also have 3 routes, 3 fixed routes, where we only have 2 fixed routes. But the nice thing about our system is we are a flag stop system, which is unusual, especially for urban centers. That means that if a rider is on the correct side of the road and in a safe place for the driver to pull over, they can just wave their arm and the bus will stop for them. So that means you don't have to go to a specific stop. You can just go out where it's safe, and there are no flag zones. You know, like there's areas of Thane, we are not gonna pull the bus over and pick someone up. It's just too dangerous. So they can just wave. And what's super nice about that is we have a lot of folks with disabilities that ride our fixed route and prefer to ride our fixed route. They might like the social aspect of the fixed route. They like the fact that they don't have to call the day before. So having a flag system is really good because we don't have to have that built-in infrastructure for stops. We don't have to have a stop a quarter mile and a quarter mile is rule of thumb of where you would like somebody to get on, that they don't have to go farther than a quarter mile to your fixed route. So that's typically a rule of thumb. This way, any stop could be a stop. Any place along the route that's safe could be a stop, and the drivers will pull over. What's frustrating though sometimes is when an individual's standing here and, hi back there, I don't know your name, but you're standing there and they're standing this far apart and expect the bus to keep stopping. Sometimes we need to talk to the riders. I'm sorry, Mark.
No,
Go ahead.
it's your presentation.
Yeah.
The 12% figure on the screen there
Yes.
are elderly disability. Is that 12% of the riders on the fixed route, or are you counting dial-a-ride?
This is fixed route only.
Fixed route
And
only,
this is
12%.
and this is not a set number because people who ride the fixed route we don't track, but we do track our elderly that are on the fixed route because we have to for federal requirements. And so we're able to do that by our half fare pass.
They pay
So we just see how when they pay with a half fare card, that's for elderly and those with disabilities. Also too, we monitor our lifts. So we monitor how many times we use the lift, and that's primarily for maintenance reasons. So we monitor our lifts and we monitor the number of wheelchairs on the system as well. So while I don't know everybody who rides the fixed route, and lots of riders would prefer we don't know who they are, versus dial-a-ride where we know everybody. We have their names, addresses, we go to pick them up at their houses. Here that's why I'm saying that at least 12%. But we do have a lot of individuals who do ride the system that have disabilities and like to ride the system. And I think one of the reasons is because it's a flag system. You can flag the bus down.
I had no idea.
Yeah, right? And that's why
great.
sometimes when you see the bus pull over in front of you, you go, what's up with that? Yeah. Okay, moving on. Oh, it's tricky. This is the smartphone application for the fixed route. So if you go up and you load, and it has to be route shout 20, you can, and these are just screens, you can figure out where the bus currently is. You can figure out how many minutes that the bus will show up at your stop. You can actually see the little buses going around. You can put it on your desktop and get the whole system, so you can see where blue line and red line and both our east and west routes are as they go around. So that's super handy for being able to determine when the bus is. You know, we don't have the data terminal screens up at every shelter like super urban systems do with a lot of, costly infrastructure, but we do have ability to see when the next bus is coming around.
I have another question, Suzanne.
Yeah, you bet.
When you said that the bus schedule is once an hour,
Yeah.
does that mean the routes are scheduled that a single bus can make the loop per hour?
Yes.
So there's
exactly.
only one bus per each route?
Yes.
But in Clarkston, there'd be 2 buses per route if it's every half hour?
Yes.
Or are their routes shorter?
Might be a combination of both.
They have more recovery time than our routes do.
Okay. So it's 1 bus per route. You
So
probably
they
have
have-
you probably have a backup bus.
And
or
they,
something.
yeah, they call it red line 1, red line 2. So red line, which is, you can see the red
Mhm.
route, and that goes up to Clarkston Heights.
Mhm.
They have 2 loops. They'll have a downtown loop, and then they have a Clarkston Heights loop. Same with Green Line. Green Line, I know you can't see that Asotin is down here,
Mhm.
but Green Line goes to Asotin. So the first loop is downtown, the next loop goes to Asotin and back. So, so they do have 30 minutes for theirs, but they also are entertaining different geography. They're not doing the exact same loop. Even Blue Line does one loop where it comes over and meets us in Lewiston, and then the other one is downtown.
Mhm. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay. Now I'll get to dial-a-ride. And we use the term dial-a-ride because you call for a ride. And, but the government calls it complimentary paratransit. So dial-a-ride could be any kind of system where you call up, but complimentary paratransit has rules according to the federal government, and that is, on these 6 items, our service has to be comparable to the fixed route. So hours and day of service are exactly the same. Our service area, typically, the FTA says you have to go 3/4 of a mile around your fixed route. That should be your territory. We actually choose the MPO boundaries for dial-a-ride, and that is for both systems. We take a lot of riders over to Clarkston, not so much, but we can if that's their destination. And the same with Clarkston riders. Have a lot of doctors over in Lewiston, have hair appointments in Lewiston. A lot of people move back and forth. So our territory is bigger than what the federal government requires. Our response time too, so this is anybody who calls the day before. So if they call on Sunday, the day before, Monday morning, we're working furiously to get those rides figured into our Monday schedule.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's what day before, even if you're not in the office, you have to incorporate those rides the next day. The dial-a-ride fare cannot be any more than 2 times the fixed route fare, so that you can't price gouge. They recognize that it's a more expensive, costly service because you're going to somebody's house, you're picking them up, and you're delivering them to a location versus somebody just hopping on the bus and the bus continues to go around. And you'll see our fares next. Trip purpose, there's no restrictions. We can't determine whether somebody's desire to go have lunch with a loved one is any more important or less important than a doctor's appointment or a dialysis appointment. All appointments are important. And then the last thing is we have to take as many dial-a-ride calls and requests as we get. We can't prohibit we can't induce a capacity constraint. So anybody who calls, we've got to be able to take those rides. Or we've got to have a really good reason for declining the ride. Like when there was snow and ice and it would get worse as the day went on, we did have to decline some of our dial-a-ride rides, especially the 6 p.m. rides. It's icy and snowy, and by that time we called off service. So that would be a decline. We register, we make a list of declines and we show the government that we're declining, but we had a good reason. And we do have same-day service available. That's something that we do. They did put a transportation plan together, human resource transportation plan a few years ago. One thing that was cited was, especially those in wheelchairs, there was no ability for a same-day service. So we do take same-day service rides if we can fit them in. We charge a little bit more for it, but we are able to do that now. And usually that's folks with wheelchairs. If somebody gets discharged from the hospital, they have no way to get home. You don't know when somebody's going to get discharged, so that's when that comes in handy. These are our fares. Asotin County does get sales tax, so they're conscious of the fact that they're taxing and they keep their fares very low. This has been Lewiston Transit's fares ever since the beginning, so our fares have stayed the same. We have not increased them since 2010.
Oh,
Have you looked to
Yeah.
see
amazing.
how big of an increase you'd have to do if you follow the consumer price index?
They don't want to know.
Wouldn't it be 10% now? It'd be a 10% increase.
Well, I mean, just if you took the level that you start now, you went through each year up to the present and figured out
Oh,
what you'd have.
it would be wild, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the only thing, we do have the same-day service fare is $5. Still, it seems like it's considerably more expensive, but if you consider you're getting the service of a taxi, it's still a shared ride service. There still might be other people on the bus, but you're still getting same day, where you want to be picked up, where you want to be dropped off.
Taxi
So,
would be certainly a lot more.
Mhm.
And you've also got the accommodation for disabilities, whereas a taxi wouldn't.
right. Oh, and new for us, all 18 and under ride free. Washington legislators put that in effect last October for Washington. And
Wow.
because we partner with the Stoughton County Public Transit, we decided to do that as well, so that people don't have to worry about paying when you go from one system to the other. A great majority of our, not majority, but there are a great number of the Clarkston and the Stoughton riders ride Lewiston Transit. So we share a lot of riders.
I do have a question.
You bet.
For the 62 plus and people with disabilities, do you
Yeah.
have a monthly pass option that would be half price as well?
We don't. The government requires that we have a half fare card, and they focus on fare, on what the fare is for a single ride. They don't focus on a pass. And we have gotten requests for that, but we haven't felt the need to do it.
That's probably because they're getting their money monthly, and they could budget better if they had a pass that was on a month basis instead of, that's what I was thinking, but that's why some disability people in particular, well, and the 60 plus, 62 plus would also be convenient for them, is because then that way they can budget their passes and stuff like that.
One thing I neglected to put up there was the fact that if you wanted to buy a pass towards the end of the month, the 15th or later, they do have half-price passes for when you're buying a pass at the end of the month. So you wouldn't have to buy pay $30 for something you're going to use from the 15th on.
So this is a really small technical question.
Yeah.
Stoughton County, you coordinate all the dial-a-ride, but you
Yes.
also do the pickup and drop off. It's your buses, your drivers.
No, they do their buses, they do their riders. We do our riders.
So all you do is schedule.
We schedule.
Okay.
And sometimes if, say, we're, a Clarkston rider is in Lewiston and they're done and they're ready to be picked up and the Clarkston drivers are all busy, we'll take that individual. So we do share trips. It makes it super flexible for us, and we really appreciate that ability between our two services to do that. It makes things more convenient and more cost effective.
But you charge their fare then, if you're taking them home.
We don't get into the fare part. Their people pay with their fares, our people pay with our fares.
That's what I mean. If you were picking up a Clarkston person to take them home, and you just
We'd punch
explained-
their punch card
or the
or,
$1.50 charge there. It certainly would be easier if those were standardized, but I understand if, you can't match their prices if they're
no.
subsidized.
Yeah. Any other questions? No? And then I thought one of the things we wanted to talk about was 19th Avenue
Oh, but I
today.
do,
Oh.
and if you're gonna switch, I do have a general question.
Yeah.
Has ridership rebounded to pre-pandemic levels?
Not on either service.
Still not,
No.
and that's
That's
pretty
And
much
it's across the
across the
board.
country.
Yeah,
I've been
it's
reading
across
that.
the country.
You would think there'd really be a lot of people jumping on
You
that.
think there would be. It's, that is a huge challenge.
It is a
nationwide.
huge
People in
challenge.
your position are, what I've been reading, are questioning and pondering and what do you have to do to get back to 2019 levels. It's such a
So the
strange.
pandemic, challenges us in terms of ridership. It challenges us in terms of drivers, getting qualified CDL drivers. So we're now looking at training drivers as one way. Whereas before we could just put out an ad and get CDL drivers to respond. So we're looking at training drivers. We hired our first one, just about ready to. So we'll see how that goes. Our hope is that we'll get new scheduling software so that we can provide a few more customer service features that other big transits offer as ways to woo those riders back. So we're working hard to do that. I didn't know if you guys had specific questions about 19th Avenue. So that was one thing I was prepared
I
to.
think the one that came up was, why can't they go to the side of the Rico building like they had
Oh.
been before?
Yeah. Well, one thing I wanted to point out, look at the mobility improvement since 2016. So yay, we're getting there. And then this last bit here, this does not show the lane that got added. So they've moved the utility pole, and then early this spring, they should have the sidewalk all the way.
Hmm.
So that'll be fully through and a good thing. And then,
Well, the concern that we've heard a lot individually and as a group is that the bus stop where it is on 90th Avenue is a long, long way to get
From
to
the
the
store.
building, the
Yes.
mall, especially Winco, especially for an elderly or disabled person. And people remember when it used to go to the door, and rules are rules. I mean,
Well,
there's nothing can be done,
it's,
right?
yeah, and so know that Dial-A-Ride can go up to the front. So if you take Dial-A-Ride and we'll take you right up to the front, that's no problem. But the Winco stop was on private property and it was right in a fire lane. And we couldn't do any improvements to it either, so you couldn't put any shelter. So I don't know if you were ever there when it was hot, but it was boiling.
Especially on the west side of the building.
Yeah, very hot. So we did not want to continue to potentially have an accident. You know, all their trucks come back there, right? And so our buses were coming in, going around the back, and then coming around. So it wasn't prudent for the city to continue to be at the Winco stop. So that's why we moved.
And Winco's insurance company had been howling too.
You know, Winco was a really great partner. They really didn't say a lot. This is more on the city and that the mall won't. Good to meet you.
Yes, you do, sorry.
And the mall really won't allow us on mall property. What you typically do for a bus stop is you get an easement that says, hey, I can use this land for this, for the time that the bus stop is there. But the mall won't do it. That's private property. They won't give us spaces. They won't allow us to come up to the front of the mall. Initially, they leveraged it because they didn't want to have to do any improvement in the front, the sidewalk. So they actually, when we used to just come up to the front, saying that we had, our two buses once an hour had marred up the surface of the parking lot. So I don't know if that would change now. So what we found is we had to put that, we had to put the transit stop right in the right-of-way. So that's why you see this tiny thin transit stop in the right-of-way, because we couldn't do an easement and go back any further. So that's kind of where we're at with that. We would love if the mall wanted to talk to us, we'll talk to them, see if we could engage them again and change the location of that. We'd be all over it. But the thing I also want to communicate is this stop also caters to the folks that go over here. I don't know if this is that much worse than this. So other paths of travel that stop services this section of the mall as well, that side of it.
So just to clarify,
Or
Winco
they-
sits on land they own,
Yeah,
right? And Winco did not kick you off.
they did not
Because a lot of
give us
people
that.
were blaming Winco.
Oh,
on that move.
no,
So Winco didn't kick you off.
They've
That
been
was-
a great
That was a
partner.
city decision. Okay,
that was.
thank you.
We felt that we were pushing it, that there was liability there.
It just is what it is. I had asked the question a few months ago, well, what happens in Clarkston at Walmart? And there was a little uncertainty at first, and then it was determined somehow the buses there do not enter the private property either, right?
Yeah, they
It's just that the
yeah,
street is so much closer to the building.
so much.
On Fair Street.
Do we have to worry about having a quorum right now?
Yes,
Oh,
Not for a
Good.
presentation,
Yeah.
but for voting, yeah.
Right.
yeah,
that's
I
all
think
we
you
have.
have to have a quorum to have a meeting.
yeah,
We
yeah.
had a quorum when we commenced,
And we start the
when
meeting.
we gavelled in, so
But-
we're okay, but we can't vote on anything.
I would say for
It's my
the
understanding.
matter of transparency and accountability, that'd be behoove us, since we don't have a quorum. Thank you, Susan.
Yeah,
for
you
your
bet.
presentation.
Thanks, Suzanne.
That we'll have to adjourn the meeting and forward everything else from this point on to the next meeting.
I think, which I think is minutes, right? Minutes and,
Minutes-
an election of
well, we
officers.
got
oh,
this-
election of officers.
We had discussion of the social,
Oh,
which
yeah, that's true.
we,
And who was going to present that? I like like when the agenda shows who the presenter is going to be.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
can't,
okay.
But we'll have to do that. We'll have to do it
Well, we
next
can put
month.
it on next month's agenda.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And everything that's left will.
And everything that's left will.
It's kind of hard because yours is like
Time
a
sensitive.
now thing versus
Right.
like a next month thing, but.
However, I will be announcing that this is my last meeting and my last, well, it's my last meeting. Because my commission is for this month, and that's the end of
I thought it was July,
It
it's
says
July.
7/23.
it. January 20th. I looked it up.
Yeah, we have
January
it.
27th was the meeting that they, that was the meeting that they,
Okay, I'll double check with the city clerk's office.
Are you reapplying?
nope,
Oh, you're leaving us high and dry, Jeff.
I don't know. Sorry.
Any particular reason? You've done-
Age.
Oh, you've done such a good job. I'm wanting you to continue.
Well, I appreciate the thought, but no.
And there aren't board members around here to thank you and wish you well, if we had known that.
Well, we'll double check.
Well,
I'm
I'll
pretty
be,
sure it
I
was
mean,
July.
I'll show up next meeting until we get
Okay.
the election done.
Okay.
Okay.
And then, when we get the election done, well, we'll go from there.
Do you want to go ahead and adjourn?
Yeah. Adjourn. It's, according to mine, 12:58.